welcome everybody back to the Inside Our Galaxy podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hernandez, as always. We got to talk about our two games that happened this week. The first one being the 4th of July game, which was a 2-1 loss against crosstown rivals LAFC, which was the big spectacle that we were hoping for, but unfortunately for that performance, it wasn't that much of a spectacle. But we'll talk about that game. We'll also talk about our game on Sunday against Minnesota United, which is a 2-1 win, a bounce-back win after that Rose Bowl game. So we'll talk about that, give our thoughts, our opinions. A little bit of Galaxy news here, some player rumors, some player updates, things like that. Of course, Ventura County updates. We'll talk about all that stuff. And, of course, we have our preview against FC Dallas this weekend, which the team will be going to Dallas. And yeah, we'll talk about that, preview that game. And so, yeah, we got a lot of things to cover, a lot of things to talk about. And hopefully you all had a good 4th of July weekend. But now we're back here to talk about the Galaxy. And of course, with me as always is my co-host, LA Galaxy Central. How you doing, man?
Honestly, I'm not doing too great right now. I would just say in general, this summer has not passed the vibe test at all. It's been one of the worst summers, honestly, ever my whole life, really. It's not been very good. Like, I got sick, I got injured on my bike. Obviously, sports have been very disappointing. I was looking forward to Italy and USA major competitions. Massive disappointments. The Galaxy lose El Trafico again. Just feels like right now a lot is not really going my way. But, I mean, what could I really do about it? A lot of it's out of my control. But, yeah, definitely the vibes are not there right now totally. But hopefully it will get better eventually.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, obviously summer is, where we, I guess, expect to have all the fun. But, I mean, I guess my summer hasn't been that great either. I mean, yeah, sure. I think I went camping a couple weeks ago. So it's like, that's all I've really done. And then this heat has been disappointing. And, yeah, obviously you saw me drink a sip of water right there because it is hot. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, the summer hasn't been it yet. Hopefully it picks up. Hopefully we get to, see some good things. And, yeah, obviously, I mean, we talk about disappointments and stuff like that. I guess the first one was the 4th of July game, which was, which we'll talk about right now, I guess. But, so yeah, let's just get right into that one. So obviously, like I mentioned before, we had the 4th of July game against LAFC, crosstown rivals at the Rose Bowl. And going into this game, obviously last week we talked about how big of a spectacle it was last year. And, going into this year, how much it meant going into this one with both teams seemingly being right there equal with each other in terms of standings going into that game. So there was a lot on the line, I guess, in the sense for that game. So it definitely was a lot more, a lot more at stake going into that game. And like I mentioned, we ended up losing 2-1 against LAFC. Pretty disappointing with the way the team performed, especially in the first half. I mean, they ended up scoring a goal in the second half. They sort of picked it up a little bit, but even then, really wasn't too much to convince to say it was a convincing performance or anything like that from the Galaxy. But yeah, obviously 4th of July game. Again, a loss against a crosstown rival. How'd you feel about that game? I know you were in attendance for that game. How'd you feel about that one? Give me your thoughts about it.
Yeah, obviously very disappointing, right? I think that's what everyone's gonna say. Whether you're like one of the smartest soccer people in the world, like Pep Guardiola, or this is your first time ever watching a Galaxy game as a fan, we're gonna come to the same conclusion, right? It was a massive disappointment. A 1 versus 2 matchup, obviously, there was a lot of anticipation for it. A rivalry game, still with a lot of people in attendance, and yeah, it just wasn't very good, honestly. It was very disappointing. Greg Vanny went with talent over structure and fit and what's got him to this place in the first place. And yeah, I guess you could say it came back to bite him, which I think made it very disappointing. We'll talk about like what he did wrong, but I mean, yeah, I don't really have a lot of thoughts about it. We had a lot of expectation about it. We had a lot of optimism about it. There should have been a lot of optimism about it because we were on a 4-game winning streak and 3 straight clean sheets, but yeah, the lineup decision just wasn't very good. Our performance, especially in that first half, wasn't very good. And a lot of our weaknesses, again, got exploited. Another set piece goal, another penalty kick. So, yeah, it sucks. Honestly, it just sucks. There's not much more to say about it. I wanted that game so bad. I think everyone did. I think the effort was there. I think we had the players to compete with them. But I think it's on the manager, honestly. It just wasn't good enough from, I guess, everybody, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's going to look at Greg Vanny, and obviously, like you mentioned, with the starting lineup, because obviously going into this game, we talked about it last week. We even said, like there's a big decision Greg Vanney's going to have to make. Do you start Fagundes? Do you leave Ricky Puig on the bench and put him in the second half? Do you take off Paint still and bring in and start Fagundes? A lot of, I guess obviously there was a lot of ways they could have gone into it. And like you said, they did it. They went with the talent over, I guess, the structure and the fit for that game. And so, I mean, I said it before going into that game. Anyone would have been reasonable, but I think it was the smart decision to put Fagundes in there, which I think everybody, I guess, and came to agreement that that's what you should have done, especially because of the fact that we've been undefeated whatever he starts, since his tenure in the Galaxy, right? So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think structurally, and the way we went into that game, like I guess, wasn't the best. But I mean, you also have to look at it through the performance side as well. How the players played. First half was not that great. LAFC, I think, went into that game. I mean, like looking like they wanted it more in a sense, but I don't want to say that because obviously it's a rivalry game. Both teams wanted it equally, but you can tell that LAFC went with a different tone and a mindset. They went a little bit more physical. In fact, a little bit too physical to the point where I thought they should have gotten at least, one or two cards in the first half, but they didn't. That's just how, that's how it's always been in the Tropico. And I think recently as well, it's just the lack of, I guess, the referee making the decisions. But point is, I mean, LAFC went pretty physical in there. We looked like we were out of it. We didn't look like the chemistry was there. And like we mentioned, we had Fagundes for so many weeks to the point where it was working. It was great in a sense. And then now you bring in Ricky Puig, you have all your DPs in there. And then you kind of expected the magic that had happened before, with all of them in there. And seemingly that wasn't the case. Paint still didn't have that great of a game. Ricky, I guess, he still contributed, still did the right things in a sense, or maybe not necessarily the right things, but he was trying to do his best, couldn't find the option, sometimes turned over the ball a little bit. That's just, how it is sometimes with Ricky. But, and then, yeah, I mean, obviously just in general, I think, I don't know, it just felt very disappointing. I don't want to say the guys didn't put in a fight because a lot of people like to say that they didn't put in a fight or they didn't go in wanting to win that game, but it's just like, at the same time, I think, in a little bit in a sense, like LAFC went in there with the right mindset, but also just the fact is, it just wasn't a good game all around. Like, I mean, you're right. Like, there isn't really much you can say, but I don't know. It just really wasn't it. I think structurally it wasn't it. Some of the player performances, it wasn't it. And yeah, I mean, what else I guess you can do? I mean, it was really it wasn't great. And even then it was still 2-1 loss. It was still pretty close, but I don't think that really, tells the whole story about that game if you were to just look at the score, if you get what I mean there.
Yeah, I totally disagree on the fact that we didn't go in there with the fact, or we didn't go in there wanting to win. I disagree with that totally. I think we went in there wanting to win. I think we even went in with the right mindset. I think the difference between LAFC and the LA Galaxy was LAFC had an identity and a structure with that lineup, and the LA Galaxy did not. Because the LA Galaxy, I mean, this season, like, a lot of players have been just in and out of the lineup. Like, first, you had Pencil starting. He was really good. Peck was still coming in, and then he had a wedding. He was out. And then in May, Pencil gets injured. He's out for a while. Okay, we play without him. And then Ricky gets injured. Okay, we play without him. Then Pencil comes back here. And then you have Brugman coming in and out, and Surreal coming in and out, and the center backs were changing every week. Meanwhile, LAFC has just had that lineup pretty much the entire season, right? I mean, they had Bogusz up top for a little bit early in the season, but eventually just stuck with Kamara. And the last, a lot of games in a row now for the last couple of months, they've stuck with that lineup, and it's worked really well for them. They had that understanding that we didn't have. It wasn't anything to do with effort or a fight. They were just a lot more connected, a lot more organized. You could tell the players were on the same page in the Galaxy. Were just all over the place, really. It was very disorganized. They couldn't seem to win the ball back. They couldn't really seem to win any of their duels. It just, one team was organized and had an understanding of each other. The other team, we just threw out guys there. We just said, okay, our best possible lineup, throw it out there. And like what I said earlier, Greg Van just completely disregarded what got us into this position to make this a big El Trafico. And what got us our winning streak and just went away from that. And you saw one team that had that understanding and the other one absolutely did not. It had nothing to do with effort. Nothing, I mean, I guess somewhat to do with player performances, but I think those player performances, kind of do fall on the manager because he put them in a position where they were never really going to succeed, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree in those aspects of it. I mean, it's very interesting because like obviously like we went into like last week we talked about that game of like what they would want, what they would go into, right? Like would they, go with your all three DPs? Would you try to keep doing what was working for you? And obviously like, I think after the game everybody including us was gonna say, well, the right choice was to put in what was working for you. But at the same time, it's just like it's very hard to say like no to like keeping everybody or like having the talent wise. And I don't know, it's just like it was very interesting how like which choice they wanted to go with. And obviously I think you're right, like that, like we had a structure for these past few weeks, then we simply just disregarded that whole structure. And then yeah, like I mean it looked off, it looked like this team hadn't played like it almost just seems like they didn't have a connection or the chemistry wasn't there or anything like that, right? But again, that was just due to the fact that Ricky had been out for quite a while. Payne still was barely coming, is coming back trying to get his form. And yeah, I mean, obviously, it just wasn't it just it was a big risk for sure. Like, I mean, I can see why you wanted to put those players in because at the end of the day, I mean, we've even said it ourselves. Like, you want to have all three of your DPS on the field because at the end of the day, those guys are going to be the ones who are producing, try to get the most out of the game and have the biggest advantages. But it's just like I don't know. It's just like at the same like I understand the disappointment on why they went with the lineup, but I mean, it's very weird. It's kind of hard to like explain it because it's just like it's like you could have gone with any option, and I think like I said last week, it was like any option had its own reason. Any option was reasonable. It was just a matter of was it going to work or not, and seemingly this was the one that did not work at all. And this team looked a little disconnected. And LAFC just were connected. They were all on the same page. And at the end of the day, with the goals that they scored, like I mean, we kind of deserve to get those goals scored on, but at the same time they earned those goals, I guess. Like nobody was gonna stop Kai Kamara in that situation. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, Jalen Neal could have gone up with him." It's like, I'm sorry, I don't think anybody was gonna stop Kamara up in the air like that. I mean, the guy mossed over everybody in our defense. Like it was just like honestly, I was just like that was nasty. But and then the penalty, I mean, you could say it was questionable, but at the same time, there was a little bit of contact in that one. And it's just they got that penalty. And yeah, we seemingly just weren't there connected. We weren't there in a connection. I think the way with the team played, it just wasn't fully there. And I think that really just what killed us seemingly. And LAFC just played the game that they wanted to play, and that's how they won that game.
I disagree on the part though that the lineup was a decision to make, and each lineup decision had its own benefits. I think it was very obvious we should have gone with the lineup that has got us results and got us this winning streak in the first place the last couple of weeks. Because if you were to match up against LAFC, like you have to match identity versus identity, and we formed an identity over recent weeks, and you just completely got away with that. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're gonna lose when you have one team that has a full understanding of each other, and you have another team putting out a bunch of players that, yes, it's our best possible lineup probably, but this is not the game to bring back that lineup. I always say when you're on a winning streak, no matter like who's on the field, you always have to stick with that same lineup and the same players. Like if we lost in San Jose the week before, okay, yes, this game, make the changes, bring in the DPs, bring in, I guess, whoever you were going to bring in. But since you had a winning streak going and you knew this team already had a strong identity that you were going against, it didn't make any sense to make the changes they made. It didn't make any sense to bench Fagundes at all. And we look at some of their performances, the guys in their replacements did. It's like just a big yikes, honestly. It was very bad. I don't even think it was close, honestly. You couldn't have really made an argument to change the lineups when we were on a winning streak, but Greg Vanny did that, and he's the only one who has the power to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, obviously he's had the power. He has the power to do that. We even said that going into last week because that ultimately that was his decision. But I mean, I will say this though: if we would have won with this lineup, I mean, would we be having this conversation? It's like that's also
No.
another thing too. It's just like that's why I say like everything has reason because obviously we've seen this particular lineup have success before. And again, I agree that the fact is that we probably shouldn't have gone with this because of the fact that we were on the streak. We were having some success with the lineup that we were having before this game. But I mean, again, that's why I only say I have reason, because like if this would have worked, maybe would we have even had this discussion? I don't think so, right?
All
So
right, but I'll ask you
I mean,
something else though when you're done.
oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, but even then, it's just like that's what I would just say. It's like, would we even have this discussion? But I mean, again, I don't disagree with the fact that we should have gone with this lineup. But again, I guess everything has its like reason. But but I mean, I don't know. It just didn't work out for us for this game.
All right, I'll ask you this though. So like that lineup that you just said, the one lineup that we put out on Thursday in El Trafico, that only had a win-loss scenario. You could have either been successful or been a massive disappointment, and obviously it was a massive disappointment. But if we went with the other lineup that we had on a winning streak, guess what? There's no way we would lose, right? We would be positive about that lineup no matter what. Because if we won with that lineup, we would have said, hey, they're continuing the same streak. They still have that strong identity. They really figured it out. If we drew, we would say like, hey, we went toe to toe with a team that's very close to us. We got a tough result, but hey, at least we got a result. And if we lost that game, even we would have said like, we don't blame Vanny for going with that lineup because we had a winning streak going with it and we formed an identity that worked. So no matter what happened with that lineup, if we played it, the lineup that got us the winning streak on Thursday, we would have been positive about it no matter what. Unlike the other lineup where it's either, it's positive because it worked or we're very negative because it was the wrong time to make those changes.
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough. I guess you can I see it that way. But then also, I would also say like like at the same time, it's like there's times where it's like if you put out the same lineup every single time, then that's also just kind of you're not like I always say, you got to mix it up a little bit here and there. And again, I'm not agreeing the fact that this was the right decision. You know, I'm just saying like everything had its reasoning, but still though, it's just kind of I mean it's just like you're right. This was more of a lineup where it was just a high risk or high risk, high reward type of deal, right? It's like if it would have worked, obviously everybody would be happy about it because of the fact that all your three DPS and the team would have won, and that gives us a totally different perspective about the team, right? And then obviously, but that wasn't the case. It ended up being a pretty big failure, but um, I don't know. It's just like it's very. Again, I think everybody is in agreement on the fact that this wasn't necessarily the lineup that we needed for this game because it just ultimately just ruined the structure and the chemistry between the team. And again, I think there was, if you wanted to bring back that structure at some point, obviously, go for it. But I think this was probably a game where you didn't necessarily need to do that. But at the end of the day, that's what Greg Vanny thought was the best decision. He thought that was the best to go against LAFC. Have our best talent, have our best players, have our talented players on the field in order to compete with that team, and that just wasn't the case, and we ended up losing that game. And again, it was still score line, it was still close, but I mean, if you look at the performance and if you watch the game, it didn't look like it was that close. It very much looked like LAFC kind of had that game with they had that game not locked up, but in a sense like they had us in that game for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I'd also say the difference between LAFC and LA Galaxy with their lineups, for this game, and I guess right now in general, is LAFC figured it out with their identity and structure with their best possible lineup available. The Galaxy had an identity and a structure with a lineup that was never going to be our best possible lineup. The reality was that at some point, Painter was definitely going to start. Brugman was definitely going to start at some point if, he is healthy, which, I mean, that's been a massive issue this year for sure. But, at least Painter, he definitely was going to come back. It was supposed to be Peck, Jovic, and Painter. So Fagundes, obviously, it was kind of difficult to find room for him. So, the challenge for us is, with our best possible lineup available, we have to find that structure and identity with that lineup instead of, a lineup that doesn't have all our best players in it. And LAFC, had all their best players in it and had that identity and structure with it. And we had that with, some of our backups in the game. And you really saw it this game. Like once LAFC wrote out their best possible lineup and we had our best possible lineup, they had a lot more chemistry and a lot better of an understanding. Meanwhile, we just looked lost and disconnected. That's the difference in the game right there. I don't think it was effort. I don't think it was lack of passion or whatever you would say, or whatever you want to say this game came down to. I think it was, coaching and lineup decisions really. And that was the difference in the match.
Yeah, I mean, I still would like to put some player performances on there because obviously there were
Oh,
some
we
players
will.
that didn't have. Yeah, there were some players who didn't have a great game. Like that's not like obviously again we can look at Vanny, we can look at decisions that he makes, but there was also some players who did not play that well and did not were not that effective in this game. So, I mean, obviously we'll talk about that for sure. But um, which I mean, I guess we kind of can move into that if you want, unless you had any other points about the game. No, you're good.
Good,
All
yeah.
right. Okay. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit, I guess, about those player performances in the sense because, you know, I guess we can start off with the defense first off. We end up getting scored 2 goals. Your starting defense, you had McCarthy, you had Yoshida and Neal as your center backs, you had Aude, and you had Mickey Yamane as your fullback. So you still had the same defense. The defense that has been giving you a clean sheet. So obviously that was a good decision to have that defense that has been giving us the clean sheets. But unfortunately, we didn't get a clean sheet here. But still, though, you rolled out with your best possible defense. Anybody that stood out to you in that defense or anything just that that caught your eye with their performances?
Yeah, obviously the defense was not great. Aude got cooked so hard in El Trafico, he even got a groin injury out of it. That's how much he got cooked, really. I mean, it was just very hard to watch. The center backs looked a bit slow. I think Neil got cooked all night, too. Obviously, the corner kick was a disappointment. Like, we couldn't have jumped with Kamar, but what we could have done that he didn't do is try to, at least try to move him backwards or make his header a little bit more difficult, but he just left him wide open and put no resistance on him, which was definitely a really big problem. Yoshida did not look great, honestly. Yamane looked okay. McCarthy had an amazing night. You talked about the scoreline, why it looked close. I mean, you could thank John McCarthy for that because if he didn't have a great night, it would have been 3-1, 4-1. McCarthy was the only reason, that game was even a game at the time, so he did really well, but everybody else, I mean, not very good. And Aude, I mean, he was just terrible, honestly. That was definitely a penalty on him for a Tuesta. Like, I was sitting 6 rows away from it, and I saw him just, kick a Tuesta after he released the ball. So that was an easy call to make. No doubt about that one. And yeah, Aude just got completely destroyed, and now he's going to be out for a bit of time because of it, apparently.
Yeah, I mean that boy was burnt chicken that night, dude. Like that, like a lot of people were grilling on Fourth of July. He got grilled that day because, geez, I mean that man just was absolutely cooked. I mean that was easily one of his worst performances of like ever in a Galaxy jersey. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really more to say on for him. Like, I mean, he just got cooked. Bogus had him all night. Just, I mean, fell a few times. I mean, just yeah, wasn't good from him. And yeah, I mean, obviously the defense I think wasn't on par or wasn't as good as we saw the past few games before with the clean sheets. And yeah, I think the only ones that really had good games was McCarthy and Mickey Yamane. I think those were the only two who really just kind of just kept the defense hold the defense. But yeah, even the center backs were pretty slow. They weren't that necessarily great. Jalen Neal didn't have the best night either, and yeah, I mean defense. I mean, I wouldn't say they were terrible, but they definitely were not good to what we were seeing them the few games before. But definitely, like I think the standout really is Julian Alde because of the fact of how bad he played that game. I mean, the fact that he didn't even get out like after the first half was kind of beyond me. But you know what? I mean, I guess Greg Vanny tried to keep them there as long as he can, but yeah, I mean, obviously, there was one point where I was just like, man, like this guy's just got to get out at some point. Like this is not a good game for him. This is just not his night. And like you mentioned, he got an injury off of that. Like that's how bad it was that he got an injury, and that's going to affect him a little bit at this point in the season. So hopefully, like hopefully he kind of figures it out, heals better. But I mean, in terms of that night, like, yeah, that was bad. But and yeah, and obviously McCarthy, he's doing his thing. Obviously, we don't question his shot stopping abilities. That's one of his biggest things this season, and obviously there was a lot of them in this game, and he kind of helped us in keeping the score close. So yeah, obviously that was. I mean, again, Alde was just not great, but I mean overall for the defense, it was poor, definitely for sure. All right. Any other things you want to say about the defense before we move on?
I think that's it.
All right. Let's move on into the midfield. So midfield, you had Edwin Cerrillo, you had Mark Delgado, and you had Ricky Puig starting in this game. Obviously, that was one of the question marks of whether Ricky Puig was going to start or not in this game. He ends up getting the start, and that ultimately kind of, I don't want to say he messed up the chemistry, obviously, because that, like we mentioned, that was Vanny's decision, and obviously he goes in there, and Ricky Puig still does the most he can. Like, I mean, I don't think he played that bad of a game either, but at the end of the day, we still didn't win. But how did you feel about the midfield? What are your thoughts about that?
Midfield was terrible, honestly. That was the worst part of our whole team. I think every single midfielder on our team got outplayed by an LAFC midfielder. I would say Sanchez is better than Cerrillo. I would say Tillman was better than Delgado, and I would say Atuesta was better than Pooch. And they all lost their 50-50 duels. They couldn't win the ball back when we were down a goal. They were getting passed through that first half. They were getting ran through. Honestly, our midfield was just non-existent. It was terrible. They all got outplayed, and yeah, I mean, it was terrible, really. No other words to put it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for sure. Like, same thoughts as well. And I mean, again, the turnover game is something that's been a problem here and there for the Galaxy, and this was the one where you definitely had a lot of turnovers. I mean, the amount of times that LAFC just had a counterattack, and listen, that's a team that you don't want on the counterattack because they're probably one of the best counterattacking teams. Not only just this year, but just in general, like these past seasons. Like they've always just been good on the counter, and this is one where if you're going to cause a lot of turnovers, that's how they're going to get you. And again, like we mentioned in the defense, if it wasn't for McCarthy, maybe a lot of those goals, some of those would have been more goals. It could have been 3-1, could have been 4-1. You never know. But yeah, I mean, obviously the midfield battle, we definitely lost. We kept turning the ball over. We couldn't necessarily create anything for our forwards either. And yeah, I mean, obviously, just we just got outplayed in that one, and if you're going to get outplayed in the midfield, that's going to be the factor of whether you win games or not. And we got outplayed, and that's why we didn't win that game. So there you go. Like, I mean, it was just not great. But I mean, with Ricky, I guess starting in this game, like, did you feel? Because obviously, a lot of people were questioning about or talking about Ricky whether he did the right decisions, did the wrong decisions, or was this did he do enough? Like, I mean, what were your thoughts, I guess, about Ricky in a sense in this game because this was his first start since coming off the injury. Like, did you feel like Ricky could have done more, or did you think he did enough, or what did you think about that?
I mean, I appreciate the effort for sure. I definitely could tell he wanted to win this game and he wanted to be out there. But I mean, on the night, it definitely wasn't great. But I'd also say like a lot of players around him weren't great either. Like the offense was pretty bad. The other midfielders were pretty bad. The defense was pretty bad. So I can't really just put it on him. I could just say like, yeah, like he played like he wanted to win, but like everybody else, like including him, just was not on the same page. There was a lack of understanding, really, which I think made him look bad and made other players look bad. I think, you got to put it on the team, honestly. You can't just say him coming in, is why, like, we didn't look very good. I think there was a lot of reasons for that, probably.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, again, like, whenever Ricky does bad, I feel like he's always, kind of one of the scapegoats in a sense. But, I don't, yeah, I mean, the effort was there, but I think, a lot of the decisions that he made wasn't the best decisions. And you're right. I think some of the players just around him just did not have good games either. And, that was another thing too. Like, it's just not can't put it just on one player. You got to put it on really on the whole team, the coaching, whatever the case may be. And I think, yeah, that was just one of those where it's just yeah. I mean, we really had we really couldn't do much in that game, and that was unfortunate. But I mean, the effort was there for him. Obviously, he likes playing these games. He wants to win these games, and But again, LAFC played much better in a sense, and especially in that midfield. So yeah, I mean, I guess Ricky couldn't do more than he needed to, but I mean, the effort was there. Um, but yeah, anything else you want to say about the midfield before we move on into the offense?
I mean, Delgado was pretty bad. Ricky wasn't great, but I'd say Cerrillo was like horrible though. He was like significantly worse than those other two midfielders. He was by far the worst midfielder on either side in that game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he did not have that great of a game either. I mean, just in general, it's just like that midfield just got outplayed. Like there was just no really no nothing more you can just say. It's just it wasn't good, and LAFC's midfield played a lot better, and definitely controlled that game. And yeah, I mean, obviously, again, if your midfield's not playing good, then you're not really going to win games in that sense. So got to be able to control that game, and we weren't able to. So that's unfortunate, but let's talk about the offense now. The offense, you had Dejan Jovic up top, and then you had your two DP wingers. You had Gabriel Peck, you had Joseph Paintstill. How did you feel about that, about the offense? Of course, we did get one goal from Gabriel Peck, so we at least put something on the board. But how did you feel about the offense, and how did you feel about their performance?
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel Peck was honestly really the only player to show up in the offense first, really the only guy doing anything, really. You could probably say that. Jovic was invisible. He couldn't find a way to get in the game. He was completely taken out of it and couldn't make any sort of impact. And Joseph Pansel, I mean, my God, it has been a rough 3 months for him. It's getting pretty hard to watch, honestly. It's gotten pretty bad. And yeah, not much more to say, honestly. Like, Joseph Pansel had that chance when we made it 2-1 to make it 2-2 right in front of the goal. Skies it over. I mean, that's a DP player right there. You bring him in to have him finish those chances right there. And yeah, just completely missed it. It was really bad. And his performance was terrible in general again. And yeah, it was pretty much just Gabriel Peck alone on offense, and nobody else really showed up at all.
Yeah, I mean Gabriel Peck, of course, he's been. Which, by the way, for the next game, also for the Minnesota game, I can talk about Gabriel Peck there again, and then also with Joseph Painsa, which are seemingly both are having at this point two different seasons in a sense, right? Obviously Gabriel Peck has really been the guy who's been stepping up a lot lately, getting the goals, getting the assists, really contributing to that offense. And yeah, I mean, he was the only bright spot in that night is that he was able to get a goal. It was able to do enough to at least keep us in the game offensively. But yeah, I mean, Jovic just seemingly they took him out the game. Weren't giving him the spots, weren't giving him the space to really get into. And then Joseph Paints, I don't know what I can say about Joseph Paints though because it's just really hasn't been his. It really hasn't been his games, since coming back from injury. And you can argue, is it because he's trying to get back into it? Is it because of the fact that he's played so many games? I mean, Joseph Pace has played a lot of games this year, over the past year. Whether when he was in Europe, whether he was with his the Ghana, with Ghana and the national team, and then to the point with the Galaxy, right? So it's like a lot of games on him. Is that still affecting him in a sense? But even then, it just wasn't the best night for him. And obviously, in the next recap, I'll talk about him as well because that seemingly wasn't his best night either. But yeah, obviously, for Joseph Paintsville, like it's just I don't want to say I'm worried or cautious or anything. Obviously there's still games left in the season and he can pick it up, but definitely for this game and and also the next game we'll talk about, it definitely was not. He definitely wasn't performing what we expect to be. But the big positive, Gabriel Peck, and he's doing all he can, and I would argue that he's probably one of the more important players on this team right now with how he's been playing. So, yeah, obviously offense gets one goal, but it wasn't enough to get us the win. So that's the disappointing part about it. Anything else you want to say about the offense before we move on?
That'll do it.
All right, then. Obviously subs, I don't really recall any, obviously I think the only thing about subs is that, we were talking about Diego Fagundes not starting, but you also don't put him in the game too early. They put him in kind of towards the end. Like, I don't know how you felt about that when Diego Fagundes not really, we didn't see him earlier than we thought we would. What did you think about him going kind of later in the game?
Honestly, I thought it was shocking. I wanted to see him come on at halftime because I thought he'd bring more structure, more organization to the Galaxy or early in the second half once we got that goal back. But for him to come on like around the 75th minute with Miguel Berry and Cuevas is like, dog, like, come on, man, seriously? With the way he's been playing the last couple of weeks and with the, unbeaten streak he has when he's a starter for this team and, some of the structure he gives this team, it's like to only play him 15 minutes in this game and we're down a goal is, I don't know, it's kind of crazy, honestly, but again, we talk about Greg Vanney like he's the one making these decisions, but again, I think that was a very poor decision to say the least. I was not happy with it.
Yeah, me neither. Because that was one point. Because I think again we all came to realizations like this game needed Diego Fagundes, and it was just a matter of all right, when are you going to put him in? And then you put him in that late to the point where we might not be able to get a chance to make a comeback or try to get the next goal. And that again it was pretty shocking to say the least that he did not even get more minutes than what we saw that night. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but again, you know, those are Greg Vanney's decisions, and although we think they're not the right decisions, ultimately those were the decisions, and that's what happened, and that's unfortunate for sure. But anyways, that's it for the players. You have any other final thoughts about the game? Before we move on into the other recap, any other final thoughts about it?
I'll ask you one question. If Agunda starts that game, do we get a result?
I'd say yes, just because of the fact that we've been successful with him for, ever since he starts, right? We've been undefeated since he started. So I think we get some sort of result in that game. Even if it was a tie, I think we still would have gotten some sort of result if Diego Fagundes started.
Yeah, because if Diego Fagunda started, I think the Galaxy would have came out more organized. It would have been more connected. He's a very smart player, has a good understanding of many different teams. I think the players would have been in better positions. The ball would have been moving more cleaner. Maybe some more runs would have been made. Like I just think we would have looked like a better team if he was on the field, but we'll never really know. But I mean, I do have a hard time imagining like if Diego Fagunda started over Painso, like maybe we are getting a result from that game, and even a result like maybe would have been okay because we still would have been close to them and not gave the extra points because like yes, we're tied in first place right now with them, but they have 2 games in hand on us. It's like they still have a major advantage, and they won the season series again, and Steve Cherundolo still has Greg Vandy's number right now, so it's like. I don't know. Very disappointing, honestly. Very, very disappointing. I had high expectations. I think everybody did, but yeah, Greg Vanny again, like I said in the beginning of the episode, went with talent. There you go. I mean, that's the consequence of it. That's not how life works. That's how you play FIFA. Honestly, you just put the best players out there to give yourself a chance to win. But Greg Vanny disregarded with Goss here in the first place, and it cost him. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, definitely. That's basically the summary of the whole game, right? So, yeah, I mean, obviously, it was a big risk to go with that lineup, and ultimately it didn't work. But in a sense, like I kind of said after that game, although it was disappointing, win, tie or lose, I mean, we move forward, and it's unfortunate that we lost that game, and it's unfortunate that we lose the series this season again against our crosstown rivals, and seemingly they've just been having our way. What was it? We've only beaten them once within the last 7 games, right?
Two
If
years,
I'm
yeah.
yeah, so that's not good. That's not good at all. Like, I mean, you gotta keep it close, and seemingly LAFC has been kind of running away with it when it comes to these Old Trafford goes. And still though, we gotta do better. But again, it wasn't our night, and I guess we just gotta move forward. I will say though, how'd you feel? I guess atmosphere wise, obviously the result wasn't there, but how'd you feel atmosphere wise? With the being in the Rose Bowl again, how'd you feel about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you take the result into account. Like I didn't enjoy it as much, but like even if I'm not taking the result into account, obviously for me, like it wasn't as cool of an event because last year it was a first time thing. I've never been to the Rose Bowl before, so personally for me, it was cool to see the surroundings, the tailgate, the atmosphere inside, the seats, everything basically around me. Now that I did that already last year, it was kind of just the same thing for me repeating, right? So it was the same tailgate, the same parking, the same atmosphere, the same, game played on the pitch. So it was kind of just like the same, really. So I don't know, like there was like 10,000 less people too. So it wasn't as cool, honestly. It was a lot cooler the first time because it was just a new thing and a new concept we haven't seen before in this rivalry. So it was okay, honestly. I mean, obviously the result made it a lot more disappointing, but fireworks and it was all right. It's just all right overall, really.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it wasn't as big of a spectacle as it was last year because, like we mentioned, it was history with the highest record attendance and everything, and obviously a lot more people in that game, and just in general, like you said, it was a first time thing for this rivalry, and now that we saw it this year, it was just kind of I guess it was sort of the same thing. But I think for me, it was also just the result kind of affected. I think if we would have won, it would have been a little bit different, I guess. But still, though, like I mean, still looked like a cool event. I think the supporters still showed out in this game. They still had the smokes and the flares and everything. So it was cool to see that on TV and stuff. But still, though, for those who went, I mean, hopefully they still enjoyed themselves just going to the game, even though we lost the game. But it is what it is, I guess. But hey, you know what? We said this last week too, or I think we said this, when we weren't recording. It's like if the Galaxy would have won again, who knows if I even go to this Rose Bowl game, right? Because then that means like, oh, like maybe I don't show up. If I show up, it's gonna be bad luck. But now that they've lost, I mean, maybe I can go now. But I don't know. But anyways, yeah, that was the Rose Bowl game. Of course, a 2-1 loss against LAFC. Unfortunate, but like we said, we moved forward, and we moved forward into Sunday against Minnesota United back at the Digs. We end up getting a 2-1 win in that one, a bounce back win for that game. You get a Gabriel Peck brace in that game, a final minutes. Within the game, you take the win, you take the 3 points. So you get a bounce back win at the Digs again after a disappointing 4th of July. But yeah, I mean, you get the 3 points, you get back on track, and I think, Cueva said this in his press conference, that Yoshida said, good teams don't lose back to back. And I think, the team needed a win. The team needed to get a result to really just get back on track and try to find just kind of move forward from that game. But how'd you feel about the Minnesota game, the 2-1 win? What are your thoughts about that one?
Yeah, definitely a very weird game going into it. It had very weird vibes for sure. Like the supporters groups didn't have any trumpets, any flags, any drums. So honestly, it kind of sounded like the boycott 2.0 again a little bit. It sounded very weird. Like they were still trying to chant, but it just sounded very odd in general. And to make the game even weirder, like the Galaxy were attacking the wrong way in the first half. Like usually they attack towards Victoria Block in the first half and they attack towards the left side where I'm sitting in the second half. They were attacking towards the left in the first half and Victoria Block in the second half, so that was very weird. So just a very weird game in general to start off with. It felt very weird, but obviously going against this Minnesota team, they're historically bad right now for themselves. They're on their longest losing streak ever. They're missing a bunch of players, so you thought like we should at least get a result, probably a win, but yeah, we start out the game's kind of shit in general for both teams. Neither team looks very good, honestly. It's just a pretty poor game. And, eventually, I'm going to say this, our three best players on the Galaxy combined for a goal, right? No, it was Pooch to Yamane to Peck, and that was the opening goal, so that was really good to see. You love to see that combination going for you. So you go into half with a lead. It feels good, but it feels like we're also playing kind of shit. So it's like, are we really going to get the full 3 points? And then in the second half, it's just more of the same. Like it kind of looks a little bit flat from both sides. Really neither side is really, looking like they're going to get another goal. I mean, I will say the Galaxy probably did have the better chances to get that second goal. And a guy, when we're going to talk about the players, Joseph Pencil, I mean, like, my God, again, another my God performance in a negative way, right? I mean, he had a one-on-one at the end of the first half and also could have passed it to Joveljic for a wide open tap and instead hits the keeper, and that's not very good. And then in the second half has another one-on-one, but decides to take a turn instead of take a shot, and that didn't work out very well either. He could have had 2 goals, honestly, easily, and that could have put the game away, but instead you leave the door open for Minnesota. Surreal comes on, again, another shocking performance from him. He has a turnover. It leads to a goal from Pookie, who scores on us a lot, obviously scored on us 5 times last year, I believe. 4 times in one game and 1 time last year, so he gets his 6th against us. That's not very good. You're 1-1. It feels like it almost feels deserved, right? Because both teams played a shit game. So it's like, okay, you have 2 teams playing really bad. Probably a draw is fair. But, the moment at the end, Ricky Pooch plays another great ball. Cuevas with an accidental maybe touch, a touch he meant. I'll still never know. But, he creates that one moment of brilliance, whether it was intentional or not, and plays it to Peck. And that's the winner right there. We get a scrappy 3 points, 3 points at the death. But yeah, there you go. I mean, that's 3 points. He didn't play very well, but the good teams can get 3 points while not playing well. And yeah, Yoshida said it himself. We don't lose 2 games in a row if you're a good team. So yeah, good enough at the end of the day. It was a close game. I think we should have been more dominant. We should have found a way to go up 2-0, but hey, you got the 3 points. Your DPs stepped up. Well, 2 of your DPs stepped up, and that's what it took for this match.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, that wasn't a great performance, but like you mentioned, like the good teams find ways to get results even when you're playing bad, and this was an example of that where, we end up not playing that great in this game, and you're right, it was pretty poor in the first half. You get a goal in the first half, which is good, and again, Ricky Puig with a great pass to Yamane just squaring it to Peck, who's again seemingly has just been on fire these past couple months, has now found his mojo, and again, like I mentioned earlier, has seemingly been one of the important players on this team this season. I mean, the way he's been stepping up. So, Gabriel Peck gets that one. Of course, Pookie gets one in the second half. They also get a goal before that Pookie goal. But it was offsides, which again I guess we were kind of I don't want to say lucky, but also it's just like
It was
the
close.
fact that Minnesota just like somehow managed to mess that up, getting an offsides for that goal. Like I honestly, I don't know, but it was just like I thought it would have stayed, but obviously it was it was offsides clearly, and I guess that was more on them than it was on us. But still though, it's it's a scrappy win. It's not the best performance, but you get the goal in the last minutes of the game. You managed to get the 3 points. That's a positive, and ultimately, I if I'm the players, I think yeah, you're not happy about the performance, but at least you're kind of just like, all right, you know what? We got that bounce back win. We got that win. Now let's stay focused. Now we got a lot of games. I think now we only have what 11 games left in the season, so we're getting there. And obviously, we got to get as much points in this month before Leagues Cup. So that's another thing too. So like I think that wasn't the best performance that the Galaxy played, but it was definitely the result that we needed for, especially for the guys and for the players, is just like they needed this win just to really just have that a little bit of that confidence back, and just really just try to be back on track, and especially now that you have a full week to prepare for Dallas this coming this Saturday. So I think again we can talk about the performance and how it wasn't the best, but at the same time you're glad that they got the 3 points, and hopefully that just keeps them back on track, and that just motivates them going into Dallas this week, and for the rest of this month. So again, I'm happy about the 3 points, but definitely for sure wasn't the best performance from the team that night.
I'll say this though, if we didn't lose El Trafico on Thursday, I think we win this game by multiple goals because I think quality wise, like we had a lot better players than they did and we were a lot healthier than they were. So we should have won this game probably by multiple goals when you look at the two teams. But since we were low on confidence from Thursday, maybe like we came out a little bit flat. We came out a little low on energy because of the supporters groups. They didn't, really bring the noise because they couldn't. So there are some weird factors for this game for sure, but I feel like, maybe in a different scenario, we win this game by multiple goals.
And I think you mentioned it right there, was the confidence, right? Like obviously they just came off a pretty disappointing loss, so they didn't. The confidence wasn't fully there, but and that's why I say this results good for them. It's like they didn't have the best performance, but they still get a win to get that confidence back in, and to keep pushing forward, and for the rest of the going into this Saturday. But yeah, I mean, obviously it was very weird. It was like you mentioned, it was a very weird game. The sports section got sanctioned by the team. And I guess they did that really just so maybe so they wouldn't get fined by the league and things like that. So, but obviously it was weird because of the supporter turnout as well. And yeah, you mentioned it earlier too, the way that they started on the side of the field, how they you know the first half they shot towards the south end, and then the second half they shot towards Victoria blocks. It was just kind of like it was weird, but still though, even with those weird scenarios and the performances, you get the 3 points, and for the team, they're that's good for them, and they needed that. They needed that win for sure. You have any other thoughts about that game before we move on a little bit into the players?
Yeah, like I said before, I think it's a game we probably should have won by multiple goals. Like we definitely had the quality to do it, but I think the confidence was kind of low coming out. And then, we couldn't manage to get the second goal, so you left the door open for Minnesota. But, at least some of your DP players got to step up, and you got a bounce back game from Ricky, which I thought he played really well, so that was good at least.
Yeah, definitely for sure. You got some of those players that definitely had a bounce back game. Some of them, others did not, which we'll talk about right now with the players. But yeah, but ultimately, it was just we get the 3 points, and that's the most important part about it. But let's talk about the players. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. Of course, in the defense, you had McCarthy at goal. You had your fullbacks actually changed. You had John Nelson at left back, and then you had you obviously you still had Nicky Yamane as your right back. Your center backs also changed. You had Maya Yoshida and Martin Cáceres starting. No Jalen Neal in this game. Obviously, there was a speculation of whether he would make the Olympic roster team or not, and stuff like that. So maybe that's why he didn't play, and and things like that. So, but obviously the defense did change in this game. How did you feel about the defense? What were your thoughts about the performance?
I mean, the defense was pretty solid, you could say. Obviously, John Nelson and Aude were night and day compared to how they played. Nelson was outstanding the whole night. I thought Yoshida had a better game than he did against LAFC. Cáceres was pretty good when he came in. And Yamane, like usual, always very good. So that was good. McCarthy, I'm going to say this, though. Like, that McCarthy save in, like, the 87th minute, was, like, the most untalked about play. The save he made on Fragapane when Cirillo turned over the ball. That save was massive because it kept the game 1-1. And if we went down 2-1 right there, I don't even think we're getting a result from that game. And even if we did get a 2-2 tie, like we'd still consider it disappointing. So that McCarthy save at the end of the game, before we scored was absolutely massive. But overall, the defense, they were better. I would say they were better, but also the quality of opponent they played was a lot worse. So it's kind of a give or take thing. So I guess they were just all right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they were still solid. Obviously, they changed it up a little bit, which was interesting. But obviously, there was reasons. Aude was you know hurt, and obviously just got cooked last game, so they had to make that change, I guess, with Nelson going in, and then obviously Neil just not playing because of the speculation of whether he would make the Olympic team or not. Um, and then you put Martin Cáceres in there, who I think had a good game. Martin had his moments. He definitely had some key moments in late in the game as well. So I think he played a good game as well. And Yoshida had a bounce back game in a sense, and Yamane was Yamane. I mean, he's been the most consistent player, on this team, and honestly, which is also something we could talk about later because there was the All Star stuff and things like that, and he was definitely one of those guys who everybody said that he got snubbed out of that roster, but still, though, Mickey Yamane had a good game as well, and McCarthy came clutch in the moments where we needed him to, and like you mentioned, in that stop in the 80, like in the 80th, minute, like within that area, he makes a crucial save, and to keep us level, and to ultimately that kind of helps us lead us to get a result. So definitely for sure it was a solid performance from the defense, and definitely but like you mentioned, Minnesota probably wasn't the best team, and probably talent wise, but still though, you gotta, I guess, beat those teams and kind of contain those teams, in order to get that confidence back up too within the defense. Yeah, I mean, defense had a solid game, but let's talk a little bit now about the midfield now. So the midfield definitely got to change. You had Edwin Cerrillo, you had Ricky Puig, and then you also had Diego Fagundes, which was, obviously with the last game, we wanted to see Fagundes start. You get a Fagundes start in this game, which was, you know, interesting with that they finally started him in this game, but he ends up getting the start in this midfield. How'd you feel about the midfield in general, and what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was Delgado in the midfield, not Surreal. Surreal came off the bench eventually, but
Oh,
yeah, I get your point. The rest is right. Yeah, so Delgado at six, I wasn't really a huge fan of, honestly. I don't think our midfield played great again. That wasn't a great decision. I think you had Fagundes more at the eight, or I guess you had two sixes at times. It was a weird formation, honestly. It changed a lot throughout the game, which was interesting. So, I mean, it was good to get Fagundes a start, but in all honesty, like, Fagundes needs to play his natural position at winger where he's best, and we're going to talk about the guy he maybe should be replacing, but yeah, I don't think midfield for Fagundes, it's kind of a bit weird not having a defensive midfielder in there, or at least a natural one. And obviously, Ricky Pooch had a much better game for sure. Had two hockey assists, played that amazing pass to Yamane for the first goal, then played in Cuevas, allowed him to take that first touch. So I guess two hockey assists, that's really good. And yeah, he had a better game, but overall, our midfield structure was kind of weird, kind of disorganized, kind of all over the place, and I don't think it really worked. But I appreciate the fact we gave Fagundes another start because he's been earning it the last couple of weeks.
yeah, definitely. Like, obviously, Fagundes, we definitely, I guess, needed to start in this one because it's just the fact is he's been playing well, and I think it was interesting still, regardless that we put him in here. And I think I don't want to say he messed up the midfield, but it definitely just gave the midfield a different direction with Fagundes in there. But still, though, I mean, the midfield played okay. I think like you mentioned, Ricky had a bounce back game, gets the two hockey assists, and just ultimately just again, having that bounce back is good, even if it's not the best of opponents. But you need that bounce back win or bounce back game, and yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the midfield just was it was solid. It wasn't that bad. It was I still found it interesting that you did take off Cerrillo in this game, but even then, he didn't have that great of a game last week, and yeah, obviously, just for the midfield, they were good, or they were solid, and yeah, I mean, really not much to say, but it was just still though, like I think it was it was just interesting with the approach that they had in this game. But hey, it worked, and seemingly, like we mentioned before, Diego Fagundes, whenever he starts, we seemingly, don't lose. But and this is one where we keep that streak alive, so you can't be too disappointed about that either. Yeah. But anyways, let's talk about the offense now. Offense, you did have Joseph Payne still. You had Dejan Joveljic, and you also had Gabriel Peck, who seemingly was the guy of the night with the two braces, with the two brace, or sorry, with the brace. In this game, getting the two goals. So, yeah, offense had, or at least Gabriel Peck had some production that night. But how did you feel about the offense in general?
Yeah, the offense was pretty flat overall. Joseph Pansel, obviously, yet another stinker, really. He played just terrible. Should have had a goal, honestly. Like, had that chance in the first half to put us up 2-0, had that chance in the second half to put us up 2-0. And as a DP player, you bring these guys in to put them in these positions to try to, double the lead or give you a goal right there. And if they're not doing that, the reality is Joseph Pansel's not doing his job right now. And it's frustrating for sure. It's been very hard to watch. It's been a very rough, not even just the last few days, the last few months for Joseph Pinto. Really, since mid-April. I mean, what has he really done? It's been hard to watch. Jovic, played not great. Honestly, again, was kind of not involved in the match. And Gabriel Peck again just carried the show offensively. Really, he basically did everything for us. Created every single chance, finished off every play, really brought the energy all night on a night where we needed that energy because a lot of the team came out flat. So he was by far the man of the match. And yeah, guess it was just similar to El Chafico, but we got the winner in that game. So I guess it was a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Gabriel Peck, I mean, again, just seemingly stepped up and has been stepping up these past, you know, this month or two. Has seemingly just stepped up in this in for this team, and and on the other side of it, again, Joseph Patel just did not have a good game. I mean, had the chances, was not clinical in this game either, and again, I mean, I kind of ask you this question too because it's like, do you think it's more just a Joseph Painter just trying to find his form again with the break that he took, or what do you think is the I guess the reason would be that Joseph Painter would be having these performances because obviously in the beginning it was much different than what he's doing right now.
I mean, I would say this though: the difference between Joseph Pansel and Diego Fagundes right now is Joseph Pansel plays to get himself going. Diego Fagundes plays to get the team going. You could tell they're two different players right now, sort of playing for two different things. And one player is a lot better of a fit for the team than the other one is right now. And I think the reality is for me is that Joseph Pansel needs to get benched for Diego Fagundes because Diego Fagundes is more deserving to start. That's the only thing I don't really like about MLS is like players are entitled to start because they costed a lot of money or they're a DB player. And yes, there's pressure to start, but if another guy is playing better than another guy is right now and is going to give your team a greater chance to win, then you should start the guy that's going to help your team out, not the guy that costed more money. So I think Joseph Pansel, needs to be benched a little bit, and Fagundes needs to continue to start. And I think a lot of people would agree on that he's been a lot better and been a lot more beneficial for the team in general.
I mean, yeah, definitely Diego Fagundes has had his run, here stepping it up, and I think you got to bench Joseph Paints at least one or two games, but at the same time, I kind of feel like this is sort of the fact of he is trying to find his rhythm again, and you're right. I think there's times where he's just being a little playing for himself, right? Like there was moments in this game where he, and even in the LAFC game where he could have, been contributed by helping the team out, than rather than him just trying to score and get himself going. I think there's other ways that he can just do that than just scoring goals, and I think that's kind of been the problem with Joseph Paints though, but. And again, but he's a very competitive guy. Obviously, he wants to try the best, and there's moments where he does, when he doesn't have a good performance, he feels like he disappointed the team. So, but still, though, I think Joseph Paints is just, I think he's just trying to find his rhythm again. I mean, we saw it earlier with Delgado when he got sick and he was, injured a little bit, and he had a rough stretch of games, and I'm hoping that's kind of the same thing with Joseph Paints. It's just these are the rough stretch of games, and then hopefully soon that's where he sort of picks it up and finds his rhythm again. And especially he has to find his rhythm going into this part of the season because, like I mentioned before, we got about 11 games left. We got Leagues Cup coming up, and he's got to find his rhythm for these games because they are important. So, definitely for sure, I think he's trying to find his rhythm, but nonetheless, this is a very disappointing game from Joseph Painso and very disappointing these past few games, for sure. So, I mean, he's got to find a way to step it up. And then, yeah, I mean, Dejan Jovic, I mean, wasn't his best game either. Wasn't really involved much in this game, but, again, Gabriel Peck found a way to, pick it up for the offense and got us the win. So, can't be mad about that. All right. But yeah, that was the offense. Any other things you want to say about players before we move on?
Yeah, Gabriel Peck definitely had a really good performance, really brought the energy on a night where the team came out kind of flat. So it's always good he's bringing that energy to us. That was really good. I think Yamane was great again having that assist, and Ricky Pooch had a much better night. Did you agree with my point earlier, though, that Pooch, Pekka, and Yamane are the three best players on the LA Galaxy? I kind of do think it is that order a little bit.
I think yeah, I would say that. Like, I mean, I would probably say that because those and respect and I guess respectively in their own like positions too, right? Because obviously one's a defender, one's midfield, and the other's a forward.
That's
So
what I
it's
was
like
thinking, yeah.
yeah, so it's like respectively. I think yeah, I mean you can make the argument that they're the three most important players, I guess, in this team. Especially Gabriel Peck, being that guy who's stepped up in this game, he's like kind of earned that this season, right? So it's like, um, I mean, yeah, you can make that argument. I mean, obviously, you know, I guess those guys find ways to keep us in games, find ways to win us games. So I mean, that's what makes them important, right?
And they did that game for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and they did this game, so I mean, that works in their favor. Um, but anyways, that was Minnesota. Obviously a 2-1 win, a bounce back win, a win that the team needed after that bad performance against LAFC. So hopefully this gives the boys confidence going into FC Dallas. And let's get into the Galaxy news part of the show. Which, if you're wondering why am I only here, it's because Alex had to go somewhere, and I had to do this segment by myself. Here we are. Let's talk about it. Obviously, there is a bit of Galaxy news out there that has happened. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there has been some player rumors, player updates as well within this week. So let's talk about, I guess, some of the rumors that have been circling around here. One rumor that has kind of been circling around is that Claudio Bravo is set to, I guess, sign with the Galaxy according to reports, or there's interest in bringing him in here, which obviously took I guess the internet by storm in the Galaxy part of it. And yeah, obviously a lot of people are confused by this. If this move happens, I don't understand why it would happen. Obviously, I think everybody knows that when it comes to the goalkeeping position, we are it seems to be we're very clear. With McCarthy at goal, yes, I mean, McCarthy does have some flaws like his distribution, but obviously his shot stopping ability has been, good for us, for the Galaxy. So obviously, like, having him as our starter, I think everybody's, confident with McCarthy in that sort of aspect. And then obviously your backup is, Mikovic, which again, a young player, a player that we have, hopefully trying to be the next guy up for the goalkeeping position, depending on how McCarthy does within this season and, next season as well. But, still though, like for Claudio Bravo, that was very interesting news, to say the least. I know there have been some reports saying um, that it's done, that he's going to come in here. I don't know if those are legit reports. I don't think they're that legit. I mean, it just seems very off if that is the case. And not only to mention, he is 41 years old. He is very up there in age, for a goalkeeper. And I think, bringing someone in like Claudio Bravo, and again, he's had some good moments, in his European career. He was with Barca at one point. Has had his moments, with Chile as well for the national team. But obviously now he is very old. I guess he does bring you experience in a sense, when it comes to his career. But at the same time, I don't see that being an option for the Galaxy. But again, I don't think it's true, until there's an official, um, you know, I guess post whether he is coming or not. I think that is when we'll see if if he comes in. Um, but anyways, that is one of the rumors. Of course, we do have a Marco Royce update. Marco Royce, I guess, according to Tom Boger, he was on MLS 360 or the MLS Countdown show over the weekend talking about Marco Royce. I guess now in terms of discussions, the Galaxy went from hopeful to now, I guess, confident. I believe was what Tom Bogert said. Going with in terms of Marco Royce, of course, he mentioned saying, like we've mentioned before, if it was about the money, if it was about trying to chase a bag, would have gone to Saudi Arabia, would have gone to a league that's going to give him the amount of money that he wants. But that's not the case, of course, with Marco Royce. and now we're getting a little bit of an update, which is a good thing. If you do want Marco Royce coming in with for the Galaxy, it had gone quiet for quite a while, but I said before, um, it's a good type of quiet because that means there's something working and there's something going on. And now we've gotten a little bit of an update. So now you're hopeful that maybe he is coming to the Galaxy. Obviously, we've mentioned before, Marco Reus, a very respectable player. Spend, his career with Dortmund, for how many years and is, a club legend over there just seemingly a respectable player. And if somebody you want in this locker room, isn't going to be a DP spot, isn't going to take, a lot of money or anybody's position. Supposedly he's not going to be a 90-minute guy and things like that. But yeah, I mean, obviously Marco Royce update, that's something that I think, excuse me, something that I think people are going to take something to keep an eye on in terms of Marco Royce. So obviously getting an update is very much, a good thing for us. And hopefully you know, hopefully we'll just see what happens. Obviously the window is opening pretty soon. We'll see what names get thrown out there for the Galaxy, see who we bring in the summer window, because again, this is going to be an important part of the season with, the games that we have this month, Leagues Cup, and ultimately towards the end of the season, hopefully, playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, some updates there in terms of the rumors and players. Let's talk a little bit about injury reports as well. Like we mentioned before, Aude ended up, like we mentioned before, Aude definitely, had a rough, week with the LAFC game, ended up getting an injury, a groin injury, I believe it was, and now they're being very precautious about it, giving him the rest that he needs. Supposedly, he might even rest up in Leagues Cup, so just to get the good amount of rest that he can have and be 100%. But Aude definitely has an injury, but um, with John Nelson, of course, playing the way that he's been playing, a good veteran, a feasible backup, and could be a good starter as well. We've seen it before. John Nelson, I guess will be taking the roles at least at some point, for a little bit until Julian Alde gets healthy. But yeah, I mean, obviously that is another injury report. I guess another injury report that happened in the Minnesota game was that Jovic ended up getting a knock in that game, and they took him out early in the game for precautionary reasons. So there is that as well. In terms of Jovic, so he might be, we'll see how that goes. But obviously, I don't think it'll be anything serious. They got a long week before playing against Dallas, so definitely for sure, Dejan taking him out for precautionary reasons, I think, was the right reasons. But that's also another thing to keep an eye out for in terms of the injury list. And now we got to, we just got to see. Hopefully, these injuries don't pile up too much for the Galaxy. But hopefully, Alda gets better, 100%, and hopefully, Jovic gets the needed rest before going into the Dallas game. And so, that's some injury updates, player updates as well. Ventura County updates as well. They got their win on Friday. They had a 1-1 draw and then ultimately won in PKs, which is something, which is good that they keep winning, even if it's not through the end of regulation. They find their ways to win in penalties and get some, more points in the, just get the results that they need for those, for the standings and for the season. So good for Ventura County that they won. And I think that's it for the Galaxy news. Other things as well. I guess, jersey update, third kit update as well. That is something that to keep an eye out, because I guess that will be released next week. Afrojack at the 4th of July game wore the third kit, looked nice. The letters look nice. The numbers look nice. Looks like a good jersey to hopefully buy whenever it drops. But that's another, I guess, update for the the third kit. But anyways, that's going to be it for the Galaxy News part of the show. And like I said, Alex had to leave early, but he will be here right now for the game preview, since we recorded that before the before he left. So here's us talking about the game against FC Dallas. So let's move on into that right now. Actually, now I take that back because actually our preview did not go to plan. Um, Fair to say, this has not been a good day for me, to say the least. But anyways, I guess I'll do the preview on my own as well. So let's talk about Dallas, FC Dallas this week, which is going to be a very tough match going up against Dallas. Of course, last time we played them, it was a 4-1 win at home against FC Dallas, which again was a pretty big win considering how Dallas has basically seemed to have our way these for the past years, and of course that was a pretty big win for us against Dallas. But now we go over to Dallas, which again has been seemingly been a tough place to go play at for the Galaxy. Of course it is going to be a summertime game. It's going to be hot over there in Texas. It's going to be a game where it's not going to be easy for the team going into the game. Obviously, of course, with the bounce back win against Minnesota, I think the team will at least be a little bit more confident going into this game. They're going to be going a lot more confident into this game, and hopefully they find a way to just, kind of do something similar against what they did last time with Dallas. But of course, that's not going to be an easy feat against this Dallas team. They still have good pieces. They still have the team to compete, even if they're not necessarily showing it in the standings. But still, though, it is a tough place to play. Of course, this week is going to be some decision making for Greg Vanney as well. Compared to like last week against the LAFC game. Do you start Payne still? Maybe, maybe not, because of the struggles that he's having. Does Diego Fagundes get a start in this game? Of course, there's going to be some questions to be asked in this game, and we'll see what Greg Vanney decides to do in this game. But again, it is going to be a tough game going against FC Dallas. But hopefully, with the confidence that the team has had, after that bounce back win, I think that's going to be, going to help them, and I think they're going to find a way to get back on track. But it is a road game in MLS. Road games are very, very difficult to play in, and honestly, it's going to be something that I think, it's going to be difficult. So if we find a way to get a result in Dallas, I think that's going to be pretty big for us. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game for sure. Against Dallas again with the heat, with everything that's going on in Texas. I mean, it's that dry heat as well. It's not going to be favorable for this team, going into that game. But still, though, I mean, again, they got to win. They got to bounce back win. Before the loss against LAFC, they won 4 in a row. So who knows? Maybe we can get back to that. Maybe we find a way to get momentum again. After, with the result that we got on Saturday against Minnesota. So it's now time for the team to build up that momentum, get everybody in the right mindset, get everybody on the same page, have the chemistry, have our players needing to step up. The players who have stepped up, keep doing it consistently, and hopefully they do it in this game as well, because again, it's going to be a very tough month. It's going to be a month where we got to get as many points as we can before going to Leagues Cup. And ultimately, we just got to find our form. We got to find our ways with this team, because obviously, like I mentioned before, we do have 11 games left in the season. We're there. We're in the final stretch of the season. And obviously, right now, we're going to be fighting for the playoff spots. And then hopefully now fighting for seeding, fighting for home playoff spots and things like that. So, this is a very important part of the season. And hopefully we find our way into, getting that momentum again, finding the form again. And, and that starts, I guess, with Dallas this week, or more like it continues with Dallas this week. Hopefully if we get some sort of result over there, but again, tough matchup against a tough team, that seemingly have had our ways, for the past, however many years, or at least recent years with the team. But, yeah, going to be a difficult game. Again, unfortunate that Alex could not participate in the preview. I mean, he did technically, but unfortunately, I just had some technical difficulties there, and yeah, it's unfortunate for sure. But anyways, can't thank you guys enough for watching this game. That's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for the episode. Can't thank you guys enough for watching and listening. If you want to follow me, at Insider Galaxy on social media. Go follow me on Instagram, on X. Go follow LA Galaxy Central on Instagram. And of course, when we were doing the preview, when he was here, the one that was supposed to be posted, his final words was, to obviously, hopefully we build the momentum, get the guys back on track and, hopefully build something out of it and find a way, to just keep the momentum going. And so, those were his final words, ending off the show. But anyways, can't thank you guys enough. Be a friend, tell a friend about the podcast, whenever you're listening to this podcast. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your night. And, thank you guys. And, peace up.
7 words.